The following video contains spoilers to the Final Fantasy XIV Heavensward Main Scenario Questline. If you would prefer to experience the story for yourself, then stop watching now. This will be your only warning. Heavensward, the first expansion to Final Fantasy XIV, released back in the year of 2015, bringing with it a lot of pent-up excitement. Pretty much anyone I talked to who played 1.0 would tell me stories of how heavily the city of Ishgard had been teased and hyped up. And the final patches of A Realm Reborn only served to build on that hype by giving a closer look into the Dragonsong War. And now, at long last, it was finally time to deliver on all of that build-up nearly 5 years later. But did the expansion wind up living up to all the hype that built up to it? Yeah, sure did, you betcha, Chief. In fact, up until Shadowbringers came out, this expansion was widely regarded as the absolute peak of the game's storytelling, and for pretty good reason. With a lot of A Realm Reborn's world building now out of the way, Heavensward was allowed more room to focus on its own narrative. And so, without further ado, because this video is long overdue, let's dive on in to see just what made this expansion so well loved by so many. Patch 3.0, Heavensward. After what has felt like months, Horsefant reconvenes with your party to declare that you have been accepted as wards of House Fortom, and as such have been granted entry into the walls of Ishgard. Within the city, you are welcomed into Fortom Manor, where Horsefant's father, Count Edmund de Fortom, expresses gratitude to the Scions for everything they have so far done for the city. After taking some time to grow more familiar with the city, Alphino decides it's only right that you repay the Count's kindness. Not being one to refuse help freely offered, the Count sends you to assist his two sons, Amanalaine and... oh god, I'm gonna butcher this one. Artoirel. You can help them in whichever order you choose, but you do need to aid them both in order to progress the story. In the Sea of Clouds, you learn that the once peaceful Vanu Vanu have recently begun attacking Ishgardian caravans and outposts in the area. While attempting to prove himself, Amanalaine instead gets himself captured by the Vanu, forcing you to rescue him. In the process, you learn the reason for their shift in attitude is due to the presence of the primal Bismarck, which has likely tempered them. Thankfully, you're spared fighting him for the time being, as Cid has been commissioned by the Holy See to do some work in the area and arrives just in time to get you out of Dodge. In the Curthin Western Highlands, you initially join Artoirel to assist with rebuilding efforts of the hamlet of Falcon's Nest, only to learn the heretics roam the surrounding area in force. You eventually track a group of them to one of their safe houses and are confronted by Lady Iceheart once again. But this time, Midgard Sormer chooses to intervene and reveals that Iceheart too has been blessed with the Echo. In the aftermath of the 7th Umbral Calamity, she met the Wormhrace Velgar and through the echo gained a better understanding of the dragon's reasons for going to war. That being said, she regrets her actions at these steps of faith, and states that she now only desires a resolution to the Dragonsong War without further bloodshed, choosing to leave peacefully. You return to Ishgard, where an ecstatic Edmund begins to shower you with praise, but gets cut short when you are both informed that Alphino and Tataru have been imprisoned on suspicion of being heretics. To complicate matters further, the accusations come from Sir Grinno, one of the 12 knights of Archbishop Thornton's Heavensward. Sir Emmerich informs you that you do have one option: trial by combat. The accused has the right to challenge their accuser, and the victor is cleared of any charges, no matter what. Alphino, of course, has no trouble defending himself, but as Tataru is, well, inept when it comes to combat, you are allowed to fight in her stead. Emerging victorious, you return to Fortom Manor, only to learn you've received a personal summons from the Archbishop himself. He introduces himself as Thornton the Seventh and offers his apologies for the accusations leveled against your companions. However, he quickly reveals that he has an ulterior motive for your meeting, as he dismisses all present so that he may speak with you in private. As soon as you're alone, he jumps straight to the point, revealing that he has met directly with the Scions, who have offered him power to assist with winning the Dragonsong War. Thornton recognizes that they're up to something though, and he admits that he doesn't trust them in the slightest, only agreeing to play along until he can learn more of their motives. Since he knows that they fear your strength, he asks you to think of forming an alliance with him, so that you can both stop them when the time comes. With much to think about, you reconvene with Alphino and Tataru to share what you've learned. Tataru, however, has grave news. General Raubon is slated to be executed. Though still wanting to maintain a low profile, Alphino refuses to stand by and allow the Flame General to die. Thankfully, he's already arranged a meeting with Admiral Merlvib in Limsa Lominsa to come up with a plan. Merlvib explains that after much debate, the accusations towards the Scions regarding the Sultana's murder were suppressed by all the major cities to prevent widespread panic. In fact, all news of the Sultana's death has been kept hidden, giving Alphino a ray of hope. In the meantime, Merlvib has enlisted the Shinobi of Doma to help find the Flame General, as Raubon was recently moved out of Ul'dah by the Crystal Braves. You touch base with the Domans to learn that Raubon is currently being kept within the depths of Halatali. Fighting your way through the Crystal Braves, you free the trapped Flame General, only to be confronted by Ilberd. He states that all his time spent among the Crystal Braves has done nothing to further his goal of liberating Alamigo from Garlean rule, declaring that he will go to any lengths to liberate his homeland before escaping. You help Raubon back to his feet and relocate to the Waking Sands, where the Flame General is reunited with his adopted son, while you are also joined by Dulala, a member of the Syndicate. Dulala reveals that Nanamo is in fact still very alive, but that the rabbit hole runs much deeper than the Scions simply being framed for murder. She reveals that Lalarito caught wind of Telegi's plans to assassinate the Sultana, and instead decided to manipulate things from the shadows to remove Telegi from the picture, replacing the poison that Nanamo drank with a powerful sedative. Raubon and the others prepare to investigate the matter further, but Alphino receives a call from Tataru stating the dragons may be preparing to attack Ishgard, prompting your urgent return. Count Edmund, however, tells you that the Dragonsong War is an Ishgard affair, and urges you leave the city to find safety somewhere else. Not content with running away, Alphino decides to look into pursuing a different solution, recalling that your earlier encounter ended peacefully, Alphino suggests reaching out to Lady Iceheart to act as a third party in an attempt to negotiate with the dragons. A nearby Estinian overhears your conversation and requests that you bring him along, as he hopes he may get an opportunity to slay Nidhogg. Alphino agrees, but only on the condition that they pursue fighting as a last resort. After Alphino has obtained some fancy new drip, you set out for the Curthern Western Highlands once more. Eventually, you track Lady Iceheart down to the frozen lake of Ashpool, and upon hearing your desire to seek peace, she decides to tell you the tale of Saint Shiva. Back during a bloody war between Elezen and dragons in ancient times, Shiva sought to bring peace between the people, and in doing so met the great worm Hraesvelgar. Despite their differences, the two fell in love, yet Hraesvelgar knew it was doomed to fail due to the vast difference in their lifespans. Wishing to spend eternity with her beloved, Shiva begged Hraesvelgar to consume her, which the worm begrudgingly agreed to do. Moved by this act, both sides decided to lay down their arms to seek peace with one another. Nearly 200 years later, however, a group of Elezen one day became envious of the power stored within a dragon's eyes. Blinded by greed, they deceived their dragon allies and stole away with one of Nidhogg's eyes. To this end, Nidhogg refuses to accept peace, desiring to reclaim his missing eye. Estinian doesn't hesitate to point out a hole in Iceheart's story, however, as he reveals that he carries the missing eye upon his person, and that Nidhogg has been ignoring him for quite some time. Believing that Nidhogg may indeed be unwilling to parley, Alphino questions if perhaps Hraesvelgar may be more open to reason, given his more neutral stance on the war. While skeptical, Iceheart agrees to at the very least guide you to the Great Worm, with your first stop being to pass through the Dravanian Forelands. As a sign of good faith, she also bids you refer to her by her first name, Ysael, going forward. This conversation also, for some reason, removes part of the suppression that Midgard-Sormr placed upon Hydaelyn's blessing, something which the worm himself takes note of. This happens periodically as the 3.0 story goes on, typically following a major story event. You eventually make your way to Annex Shrine, a series of towers in the Forelands where some of the lesser dragons and Hraesvelgar's brood make their home. There, you meet the dragon Vidofnir, who reveals that tensions have mounted between the dragons and the local Nath tribe, who have summoned a primal. Because of this, she refuses to open the path to the churning mist to you so that she may instead protect her home. You and Ysael respond by attacking the main nest of the Nath so that you may be captured and brought before the primal Ravana. Ysael attempts to reason with Ravana, but sadly her words fall upon deaf ears. That being said, an amused Ravana instead strikes a bargain. Best him in combat, and he'll stop fighting with the dragons. Lose, and you both must serve in his army. Ysael takes advantage of these surrounding crystals to transform into Shiva, but unfortunately is overpowered by the primal, who then turns his attention to you. Oh, don't mind me. I'm just gonna... Yep. You emerge victorious and leave with Ysael to report the good news to Vidofnir. This is also the first of a small handful of appearances by the Asian Igiorum, who watches you depart. With your promise fulfilled, Vidofnir opens the way to Samal to you. You ascend to the peak, being forced to slay Nidhogg's consort, Tiaman, along the way. Naturally, this makes Nidhogg very cranky, but you achieve your goal, finally arriving in the home of the dragons, the Churning Mists. You quickly learn that the dragons aren't the only creatures making their home above the skies, as your party catches sight of a fleeing Moogle. After a brief trip to Gridania, you return with Connie Senna in tow, who is able to calm the wary Sky Moogles and earn you their trust. They provide you with a special horn, which may be blown near the Great Worm's home of Zenith, whenever they seek an audience with Hraesvelgr. True to the Mughals' word, Hraesvelgr answers your summons, but immediately asks that you and your companions leave. Ysayle pleads with Hraesvelgr, stating that she has called forth Shiva's spirit, but the worm dismisses this, stating that the Shiva summoned by the Elezen is nothing more than a fantasy fueled by her own dreams and expectations. Ysayle despairs, but at Alphino's insistence, Hraesvelgr decides to explain to you the origins of the Dragonsong War. 200 years passed after Hraesvelgr consumed Shiva, after which King Thordan, the first of his line, deigned to claim the power of dragons. He lured Ratatoskr, another dragon of the first brood, into a deadly trap, laying claim to both of her eyes and slaying her in the process. It wasn't long before Nidhogg learned of this betrayal and set forth to avenge his sister. Though he was able to slay King Thordan, the damage was done, and an injured Nidhogg fled, vowing never to rest and to bring an eternity of suffering upon Ishgard. Ysayle suggests returning the missing eye to Nidhogg, but Hraesvelgr dismisses this, saying that Nidhogg's madness has overtaken him and he can no longer be reasoned with. Having tired of conversation himself, Hraesvelgr takes his leave. With diplomacy now off of the table, Estinian declares that you have little choice but to kill Nidhogg. Ysayle, visibly shaken by Hraesvelgr's words, stays behind while the rest of your party makes for Nidhogg's lair, the Eyrie. Understandably, recent events have caused Nidhogg to surround his lair with turbulent winds, making entry questionable. Alphino recalls the airship that allowed you to reach Garuda's lair, and with Cid currently being in Ishgard, decides it's time for history to repeat itself. Luckily enough, Cid is prepared for you, as he's been working on a prototype airship specifically designed to handle your small problem. That being said, he admits it's not quite ready to take to the skies yet, and needs a bit of extra time to prepare the ship. Right on cue, Tataru rushes in to inform you that Raubahn has finally located a lead on the Sultana, and has requested you and Alphino join him to investigate. You reconvene with the Flame General at the Waking Sands, and learn that the Domans have tracked down Nanamo's lady-in-waiting to Western Thanalan. As you were there when she administered the sedative to the Sultana, Raubahn wished for you to be present when the time came to confront her. Before you can question her, though, you find Lalarito waiting nearby to speak with your group himself. Lalarito once again confirms Teledji's desires to gain control over the Omega weapon resting under Cartano, and that his own involvement was simply to take the threat out of the picture. He also admits that he never wished for any lasting harm to come to either Nanamo or Raubahn, and that after Ilbert's actions escalated too far, he stopped associating with the Crystal Braves. Lalarito states that he is willing to restore Raubahn's position as Flame General, but Raubahn is thoroughly disgusted with the Syndicate members' actions. Dulala, however, reminds him that his execution of Teledji without trial was also very damning, and that he should accept Lalarito's offer. Reluctantly agreeing that Lalarito's actions did ultimately save the Sultana, Raubahn decides to start from a blank slate as the Lalafels suggest. As a sign of good faith, Lalarito provides Raubahn with the antidote for Nanamo, which the Flame General promptly administers. Now that Ulda will be returning to business as usual, Alphino decides to formally disband the Crystal Braves, and instead refocus his efforts on relocating the scattered Scions of the Seventh Dawn. Upon returning to Ishgard, you find the airships are nearly set to go, and report to Emmerich to tell him of your plan. While both Alphino and Emmerich are eager to join you, Estinian turns them down, presenting the worst-case scenario should both he and you fail to slay Nidhogg, and thus do the two of you set forth for the Eyrie, where Nidhogg awaits. After fighting your way through Nidhogg's forces, Estinian uses Nidhogg's eye against its owner in order to restrict the dragon's power. He then delivers the final blow, prying loose Nidhogg's remaining eye and dyeing his armor red in the blood blood of his enemy. Your victory is cut short, however, as the Echo shows you a vision of the past. In the aftermath of the original King Thordan's battle with Nidhogg, you see the first Azure Dragoon and Sun King Thordan, Haldrath, as he holds both of Nidhogg's eyes. While his knights rejoice in their victory, Haldrath chooses to forsake his throne, disheartened by the bloodshed brought about by their order's thirst for power. This causes many of the original Knights 12 to take their leave as well, with only the heads of House Zamail, Durandare, Fortomp, and Halianart remaining. The four agree to rewrite Ishgard's bloody history to one of their choosing, so that they may govern the city together. Sharing this revelation with Estinian, he at long last accepts the truth of the Dragonsong War, but picks up on one important thing from your tale, for in your vision, Haldrath had laid claim to both of Nidhogg's eyes. If this was truly the case, how did Nidhogg come to possess one of his eyes once again? Suspecting that Hrace Velger may not have told you the whole story, Estinian decides that the time has come to meet with the Great Worm once more.